Welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport.
Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport indeed. Today we're going to have a look at all the crashes from the Macau weekend. Got a lovely selection of Formula 3, touring cars, GT racing and bikes all around the tough streets of Macau where chaos usually reigns. So we start with the touring cars, and here's the godfather of touring cars, Tarquini, straight into the wall, doing his car no favours. And here's Arthur Law, the Hong Kong driver, just scraping the side of the wall, and that's enough to damage his car, put him out of the practice session. Here's another Honda driver, Tang, with Team TRC, again just dragging it across the wall, damages the front and the suspension. And here we have Wong's Ford, head on into the wall, plenty of damage, almost hits the Mini as it tries to squeeze through. Now here's Benani, who did not have a good weekend, spinning it round into the middle of the track, enough to get the session stopped. Here's Chong's Subaru, sideswiping the wall. Lots of different techniques here. Here we have Azcona, sending his Seat straight into the wall as well. Now here's Dahlgren and Jim Kato getting together down the straight, spinning Kato into the barriers. Another Seat getting involved, and that Honda looking pretty second hand. And here's Lukta in his Volkswagen, bouncing off the wall. Looks good to continue, but it wouldn't for much longer. Now here's the big one, Shedden straight into the wall. The rear end spins out slightly into the middle of the track. Mikulits comes around the corner unsighted. Both cars damaged, blocking the entire road so no one else can get through. Some pretty hefty damage on the Audi and the Hyundai, and the session would have to be stopped while they're craned out of the way. Now here's Alves Diaz in the Mini, taking out another Mini. The pair of them just parking it into the wall, and for such a slow crash, quite a substantial amount of damage. Another Mini getting into trouble. This is Valente being spun by a Mitsubishi, just avoiding the wall. Here's another one, Lukta again and Azcona again, with Vinay getting trapped by the pair. Azcona would get going, leave Lukta in the wall, as would Vinay. The first corner at Macau always causes chaos. Here's a rogue Audi, spinning it back into the middle of the track, hitting the Honda. Several cars bumping into each other there. Bit of a mess. Now here's Benani and Tassi making contact, almost spinning Tassi round. The pair of them shooting down the escape road. And that's where we'll leave them as we move on to GT racing. Don't watch the Ginetta in the front, watch the Ginetta behind. There he is, there's Chong, spinning his Ginetta gently into the barriers. And here's another Ginetta scraping the wall, getting away with it this time. Another rogue car. Here's the Macau master, Eduardo Mortara. He's won it 4 times. This time parking it in the barrier. Just leaving enough room for the other cars to get through there. Here's Chen in his Audi, hitting the wall pretty hard. It's a fast corner towards the end of the lap, burying it deep inside. It's going to need a hand getting out of that one. Now here's a Porsche, you can just see it in the background, hitting the wall, spinning round, doing loads of damage, collapsing the rear suspension on one side. And here's Chen again. There's Mara Engel and Mortara getting into it. Here's Chen spinning it round, just catching the barrier, doing a small amount of damage. Here's Engel and Mortara again. This time Mortara hitting the back of another car and hitting Engel straight on. That was a big hit for two very experienced drivers. Mortara parked there. Engel managed to make it most of the way down the escape road. Plenty of damage. And here's a Ginetta and a Lotus getting together under safety car conditions. The Ginetta having broken suspension. The Lotus looking like it's not going much further either. Now here's Chang's Aston Martin. Looks like it's racing well, looking quick. Hitting the wall on the way out, losing a wheel, hitting it so hard. That's a lot of damage. As you see it from another angle, you can see just loses the back, slides into the wall, takes the wheel off. Very expensive repair job for the Aston Martin. And here's a Porsche. Here's Kevin Estre. Another one losing a wheel. The speeds of Macau and the tightness of the circuit produce an interesting challenge for the drivers. Kevin Estre sliding along the wall there. Leaving his wheel behind. Another expensive repair job in store. Now as we see the chaos at the front, the two out Porsches at the leading, but there's Piccarello in the Mercedes hitting the wall, blocking the Audi off. We'll leave them there as we move on to bike racing. And starting here we have Silva Perez picking up his bike after an accident. Looks very heavy, and we can see him here as he comes round the hairpin, just entering it now, puts the power down too early, flicks himself off. That sounded wrong. And it leaves Silva picking up his bike, trying to get back into it. And here we have Hodson falling off the bike and sending it back into the path of Saveni. Both drivers falling into the barrier. It was probably very uncomfortable. But the big pile up of the day. And just watch the bike coming around the corner now, nowhere to go, flips right over it. Quite a mess as we move on to our final category, the single seaters. Starting with Yuki Tsunoda sliding into the wall. A pretty hard shunt to start us off, losing the front wing. And here's his teammate Max Futrell. He's gone into the barrier. Another one at that first corner at Macau, Lisboa. And here is David Beckman. Another fatality at this corner. And just catching him is Dan Ticktum as he comes through. Destroys the back end of his car. Both of them would have been very hopeful to get further up the grid in qualifying. And here's a mass crash. Lots of cars getting into one another. One car spinning out. And as you can see, just no space to go at Lisboa. And now the Macau parking lot can begin, as all the cars have nowhere to go. And the red flags will come out. It leaves quite a mess. Luckily the cranes at Macau are used to it and work very quickly. They need to work again, especially for Felipe Drugovich. Same corner, same issue, straight into the wall. Now as we move on to the race, that little bit of contact between Robert Schwartzman and Christian Lundgaard was enough to take the 2019 Formula 3 champion out of the race. barely more than a light touch. It's broken the front wing, and that's Schwartzman's race over. One of the favourites out. Less favoured is Leonardo Pulcini. Again, Lisboa sliding into the wall. Not as bad as Ferdinand Habsburg. Hitting the wall hard, leaving flames behind. Lucky to walk away. So we start with GT racing, and the Macau GT race is usually one of the biggest events of the year in terms of the GT class, but it was missing a lot of top stars this year, so plenty of action from the locals. As you can see here from this Lotus, it's actually really hard to get round a corner. And now remember this Gold Lotus. And now here's another Lotus finding it tricky at Macau. And it's the car in the background you want to look out for. Yep, it's our old friend in the Gold Lotus spinning at the exact same corner. And hitting the exact same piece of barrier. And here he is again at the exact same corner. If you're going to crash this much, better not have a gold car that's easily recognisable. Now here's two Ginettas getting very friendly. Or very unfriendly, depending on how you look at it. He seemed to get away with that one though. Now the big boys, and here's another gold car struggling, although this one with a little help from his friends. And here's a lone BMW spinning into the barrier. Looks like a fairly slow accident, that one. And here's a gold Mercedes again. I would stay away from gold cars at Macau if I was going there. Now there's something wrong with this BMW. Yep, definitely something wrong with it. And Macau being a tight street circuit, it's actually very hard to recover cars. And here's a gold Mercedes again. Definitely the unlucky colour of Macau. And this Mercedes does no better. In fact, it probably does a lot worse. Race to win, you might actually want to finish the race first. So we'll leave the GT class on the podium. Once again, it's the local drivers taking the victory this year. None of the big names of GT racing turning up. But we move on to the single-seaters. As I said, this is part of the Chinese F4 Championship rather than all the stars of Formula 3. But the local F4 drivers still give us plenty of action to look at. Including this car doing the classic mistake of going straight on at Lisboa. And these cars are not easy to turn around. I don't know what this car's doing. It just seemed to drag against the wall and then spear off to the right. And this one also speared off, but this time to the left and like a dart hits the barrier. Now here's another one spinning and then like a dart heading straight for the barrier, but actually avoiding it this time. And here's the classic Macau car park. It only takes one to spin. And as I said, these cars are very, very difficult to turn around. Not really designed for it. So if you get stuck in the middle of the track, you tend to cause a pile-up. Although they are queuing very politely, which is very good of them. I think it's going to take a while for these marshals to move this car off the track. Although that crane is very handily placed. It's something at Macau they've become very, very good at after all these years of holding this Macau weekend. They know how to recover a car quickly. Or after a few hours, as it may seem. I'm sure they'll get it out of the way eventually. Now, the safest place to be at Macau is surely behind the safety car. Because nothing can happen, it's just following the car in front at a safe distance. What could possibly go wrong? There is no way you can have an accident behind the safety car. Unless you're these knuckleheads, of course. It's amazing they allow some of these people to race. And again, it's very, very hard to turn around in a Formula 4 car. I'm sure he has a few choice words for his compatriots. And here's another car performing a magic trick, disappearing and then reappearing. Now the best place to have an accident at Macau is somewhere where no one can see it. This one almost got away with it, but sadly slides into view, although one of its wheels does try to stay hidden. And we'll leave the F4 race behind. Only 15 cars actually making it to the finish. And not too much action. But the Macau Grand Prix goes to a young Chinese driver, which is a great feather in his cap. But we'll move on to our final category, the touring cars. No World Touring Cars this year. We have to make do with the Chinese Touring Car Championship. But this race, unlike the others, does have a couple of big names. Namely Ma Qing-ha, who has won World Touring Car races, and Rob Huff, who has won more races at Macau than anyone, with 10. They both line up at the front of the grid. But there's also the Touring Car Cup, and as you can see, this Ford Focus isn't going to go much further. And here's a Mitsubishi sliding off at Lisboa, and a Mini copying the exact same mistake. This Mini even paused for applause. Now here's two more cars getting very friendly. That's a big hit. But actually, as it turns out, he's just helping his friend get in the pit lane. And here's another car sneaking off the track, performing magic. And a Volkswagen failing to make it round a corner. And here's an Audi going far too fast, slamming backwards into the barrier and grinding along the rail. And of course, the classic car park. But this one was kind of interesting. As you see, the two cars seem to spin independently of each other. And then another car spins avoiding them. Another car drives into the back of one of his partners. And then a Honda gets a bit too frisky. And this is very unfriendly, but at least the teammates help each other continue. And another car park. And apparently touring cars are just as hard to turn around as the Formula 4 cars. Plenty of cars in the touring car field this year. All of them waiting patiently. Now here's a damaged Volkswagen, and you can always ask yourself, how did this happen? Well, quite simply, he had a little help from his friends, although I think he did a lot of it himself. But he has torn the front of his Volkswagen off, perhaps making it lighter. And here's two cars entering the frame, with one of them going the wrong direction. Now here's the big one. This is Rob Huff and Ma Qing-ha, and Rob Huff just nudges Ma into the barrier and does a massive amount of damage. That pretty much settled the race in Huff's favour, although he was disqualified. But Ma Qing-ha was left at the back of the track. And here's another Audi looking to do a facelift. Slams into the barrier across the track, and there's just nowhere for this car to go. Again, huge damage done. And here's a Honda doing the exact same thing. Again, plenty of damage. We start with the touring cars. And it doesn't take long for one to hit the barriers at Lisboa. It tends to be one of the most common crashes you see at Macau. Here's Badaraku. I believe he's camera shy because he just did not want to be seen on the screens. And off he goes to the drive-thru at McDonald's. Mendonca Choi was in a battle for position when he got caught by the car behind him. Took a nice big chunk out of the back. And that is one damaged Mitsubishi. And here's another car going into the barriers. And he's taken a friend with him, who promptly stalls in the middle of the track. It's one way to stop your competitors getting past, I suppose. Su Leng Hong in his Mini was very unlucky not to get away with this one. Getting stuck in the barrier and tearing the front suspension apart. And here's another car hitting the barrier. doing a hell of a lot of damage, even taking the wheel off. And it's still going. And another Mini getting into trouble. That's Paul Fan Kwok Ping doing both ends. Now, it wouldn't be Macau without a big pile-up. And it's all caused by a Mini going too fast and taking pretty much the second half of the field with him. And this is only going to get worse, especially if you're the driver upside down. It's not finished yet. Here comes the Lotus. I imagine there's a scrap dealer in Macau rubbing his hands together right now. He's going to be very busy over the next couple of weeks. At least there's one lucky driver who's managed to get away with it. Funnily enough, that brought out the red flags. But whilst all that was going on, here's the leader in another Mini, and he's lost it as well. The second place driver gets away with it, but it's the Mini behind who does not, and another Mini spins in sympathy. If you're at Macau, maybe don't bring a Mini. And here's a Honda who just about manages to get away with it somehow. Very close to the barrier, and yet unscathed. But not for very long. And here's another two getting involved with each other as we leave the touring cars and head over to the world of GT racing. And it's a Ginetta that starts us off. And if you look in the background, it's another Ginetta that keeps us going. This one a lot more damaged. At least it's out of the way. Here's Ivan Mac Hugh Kong getting spun by a rival, but at least they let him continue in front. Very sporting of him. And here's two BMWs. You'd think racing the same cars would be kinder to each other. Now here's two cars getting very close to each other. The Mercedes barges the BMW out of the way, and the BMW driver didn't like it, and so he slams him into the barrier. Amazingly, the Mercedes keeps going with steam pouring out of it, but the damage is done. The BMW driver is probably very lucky to get away with it. It's amazing that Mercedes kept going as long as it did. Here's Wong Kwai Wah getting it wrong at the hairpin. And he's another one who's taken a friend with him. So yet another BMW getting in trouble. It also won't be the last we see of him. At least most of the other cars got away with it. And there's another car heading straight into the barrier. This one's an Audi. And here's Wong Kwai Wah again having a much bigger accident. Pretty much totaling his BMW. And another one. This is Zhang Ya Qi, whose weekend was about to get much worse. There he is. Spinning around. Not much of that car left. He should have probably given up after the first one. It's amazing how many times he spins around. Actually qualifies him to be an astronaut. But that was a very, very high speed accident. And here's a Lamborghini. Not quite getting away with it. Leaving some bodywork behind for his competitor to run over. And here's another Lamborghini, this one blowing up. But he's not the one we should be watching. He has left oil all over the track. And here come the leaders. The first car gets away with it, but Dao Loyang does not. And he's very lucky not to hit the Lamborghini on the way past. It's amazing what a little bit of oil will do. Amazingly, they'd rebuild that car and it would win the GT race. And that's another car in the barriers as we move on to the single seaters, and sadly the final category at Macau. And as usual, it's friends playing and people hitting the barrier. Same car from another angle. Here's Li Chao doing the exact same thing. Here's Wang Yunming. He gets it all wrong as well. And there we go. Once again, it's best to do this with friends. Here's Peng Li Xin having a harmless little spin. And again, it's in the background we should be looking as Patrick Sangwai spins into the barrier. He's going no further. And as his competitors continue, here's Li Kit Meng. That's two more cars left behind. But we'll leave Charles Hong to take his second Macau Formula 4 victory. And here's hoping in the future we can go back to having the international stars. Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And we have another Macau weekend to show all of the action from, most prominently the crashes. In fact, this is all the crashes from the Macau weekend 2022. This is the 4th year that I've done a compilation for Macau. And I have to say that this was one of the best years. We have 3 categories to look at, touring cars as you see now, as well as Formula 4 and GT racing. But we had 3 categories of touring cars to look at. These ones that you've been watching are from the Road Sport Challenge. These are the most amateur of the drivers here, but as you can see they go for it like no one else. These Mitsubishis are very nice, until backmarkers get in the way, then the only solution is to punt them into the wall, even if it wrecks your own race. The gold and black Lancers are very nice looking. Now onto the Chinese Touring Car Championship, and these are less amateurish, but on the surface it doesn't really appear to be that different. That's a Hyundai crashing into the wall. And here I believe we have a Volkswagen, which is actually a very nice looking car. And there's another driver almost getting it wrong, but somehow saving it. We'll see plenty of action from Lisboa. This Audi driver, not so fortunate. And here's another one into the wall, sliding sideways. That's a very quick corner to crash at, and I believe that's one of the very nice Volkswagens. And here's another Audi who'd have probably been better going down the escape road than sliding into the barrier. It's a bit late to tell him that now. And this was a big one. I think this driver needs to learn where the brake pedal is. And that's a Macau barbecue. Now if you look in the background, you'll see Sonny Wrong getting it wrong and hitting the barrier. He has done a pretty big job on his Cyan Lincoln Co car. And 4 cars together at Macau is never a good idea. So here's 2 of them getting out of the way. Or shall I say getting in the way. Now again, this is far too many cars going into one corner at Macau. It all gets a bit crossed up and it's the black Chevrolet that hits the barrier. Now on to TCR Asia. And that is a very fast accident for a Volkswagen. This poor unfortunate driver crashed on the formation lap. Always embarrassing when something like this happens. And even at low speeds, warming up the tyres, he has done a fair bit of damage. This meant a safety car start, and with everyone bunched back up together, carnage ensued. But as you can see, the front two have pulled away very nicely. There's no way they could be in any danger here. It's everyone else who's in... Oh wait, no, it's the first two. Somehow they both end up spinning and causing a bit of a car park. And another driver has managed to go off all on his own on the straight bit. So let's see what happened here. The first two off camera. Well, the first one crashes and the second one just seems to spin in sympathy. As for the Honda, well, it just looks like he was trying to shorten the car. Very, very quick crash. Very high speed. Hopefully he was alright. And there's another spinner, but this time far more gently. Now, again, don't watch the cars in front. It's the one coming through the picture now. I don't know why the camera cut away. But that is a very bright pink car in the barrier. We have another one here bouncing off the walls on a straight bit. Not sure how he managed that. And here's someone kind enough to spin at the back of the field on their own. Done well to not hit the barrier at first, but in the end he was kind of just drawn to it. Now here's the big one of the weekend. This Hyundai has been completely demolished. There is nothing left. That's the engine rolling away from the car. You see from this angle, it actually bent the barrier around the car. That was an incredible shunt. A few other cars got involved as well. That is a very big mess for them to clean up. Now let's move on to Formula 4, and they are very capable of having big accidents here as well. As you can see, not much left of this single-seater. And again, a lot of fluid and rubbish on the track. And here's another one, skating into the wall and then hiding from the camera, whilst others just drive into the corner at Lisboa. This one was pretty incredible. Big spin, gets it back round, almost gets it facing the right way, but most importantly, he doesn't hit the barrier. Unlike this driver, who does. And we have another one here. For some reason, that corner seemed to catch quite a few people out this weekend. And he's another one who was unfortunate enough to hit the wall. And doing quite a fair bit of damage and being very dizzy. Now this one should be rated 18 because the 77 is definitely trying to mount the 32. It didn't really work out for either of them. And again at Macau, busy start to the race. Not a lot of room for everyone to get through. And the final corner is also very difficult. Tearing this car to pieces. In fact, almost bending it in half. It's now banana shaped. And there's a car driving against the wall in the background, which is not to be recommended. As you can see from this angle, it looks like he just ran wide and appears into view. This is a scary one. Quite high speed, takes off one wheel, hits the wall, loses the other one. Now onto GT racing. These big old cars, it's almost amazing they actually managed to get round Macau at all. In fact, some don't. But this driver just about manages it. Touches the wall, turns on the wipers, but survives. Now these Ginettas are very nice looking. They go around corners very nicely. Oh, except that one. Yep, he's stuck. And here we have another car going straight on, and to show you how hard it is to turn around at Macau, he needed a little bit of help, but he did get back on his way. Unlike this Audi, which spun on its own and hit the wall, he's going nowhere. There's another car disappearing out of view. And another one travelling the length of the barrier. It's amazing how much damage that does. Now that's a lot of GT cars in one place at one time. You can guarantee something's going to go wrong. And with that many Mercedes, it's bound to be one of them. Or maybe even two of them. A fairly slow spin, but enough to cause chaos and car parks. And another one hitting the wall around the turny bits. In fact, that looks like the same Audi as before. And here's a couple of Ginettas getting into the action together. And again, even though it was a fairly slow speed spin, it still did quite a lot of damage. As did that one. And this one. And that one. In fact, very much that one. That's a very broken Mercedes. And another Audi getting it wrong at Lisboa. The Mercedes spins here and pretty much blocks the whole track. And for Porsche, there's nowhere to go. That's definitely a red flag because they're blocking the whole track and no one's going anywhere. And for our final crash, I give you a GT start line. A rolling start with plenty of cars, all getting in each other's way. And then this happens. And that is 4 very damaged GT cars and a very expensive crash. So that was it for another year of Macau action. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel. There'll be more crashes and more motorsport news and more motorsport action upcoming throughout the next year. So with that, once again, thank you for watching and have a good one.